We are opening our seminar. We introduce the program. We have our program with us. Our seminar is on the business of being an author. You are all welcome to be on this as forum, and the seminar is organized by the Uganda Textbook Academic and Non-Fiction Authors Association, together in collaboration with the International Authors Forum, the Ministry of Education and Sports Uganda, and the Norwegian Association of Non-Fiction Authors and Translators Association. We have 4 speakers, and we will be introducing them as we proceed. But before we do anything, I want to request our program administrator, Ms. Nakamia Rachel, to lead us in prayer. You can pray from there or come here. Come here. Yes.
Let's humble ourselves for a moment. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this day. I want to thank you that you have enabled us to prepare in such a way, Lord. And when we start this seminar, we ask you to come and give your Holy Spirit. So we ask you to give us your great wisdom as it is going to be Lord. Father, we acknowledge your greatness in this seminar, and everything you're going to discuss, everything you're going to teach us is going to be fruitful, Lord. We thank you, Lord, in the name of Christ Jesus.
Amen. Thank you very much, Rachel. I will first give an introduction of why we are here, and then from there we'll introduce the speakers, and then I will be calling upon the speakers per speaker. That is the procedure. As I said, our seminar is on the business of being an author. Business of being an author. And our theme is the business of being an author, author's recovery strategy post-COVID-19. That's all the recommendations we'll be giving is how can we come out from this COVID-19. My introduction of this seminar is very simple, just to be on the point and how we conceptualize this seminar and for and where we are going from this seminar. Will agree with me that globally, authors do not only aim at adding the world's store of knowledge or literature, but also contributing towards lifelong learning for the transformation agenda of the society. The current commitment of the Universal Sustainable Development Goals ensures inclusive, equitable, and quality education. For a long time, many of the Ugandan authors have taken authorship as a secondary source of income, and thus depend much on their main jobs for survival and for their well-being. In addition, authors have relied on publishing of books, book sales, royalties, and supported occasions such as book distribution and book readings to help them earn a living. In response to COVID-19, some authors have attempted to make relevant materials electronically, engage in e-learning, and many of them are now attempting to do EPR review and publishing process. In essence, authors engage in writing in order to share knowledge, and creativity, popularize ideas, adventure, build a legacy, and make a living. Uganda Textbook Academic and Author Association, since 1913, when it was registered, has been trying to build the capacity for authors to make sure that that aim of authors that they are supposed to be is achieved towards their living livelihood. This has been done through organizing workshops, seminars, symposia, authors exposition, public talks, and also awarding some writing grants. However, in the year 2019, when COVID hit the globe, Uganda was not spared. The pandemic equally affected authors, and particularly the authors of primary and secondary schools who were severely hurt. This is because many of them entirely depended on teaching in schools and could not cope up with life. This hampered their authorship work. To recover from the limbo of unpreparedness among the authors, UTANA, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education and Sports, the International Authors Forum, and the Norwegian Non-Fiction Writers and Translators Association, are organizing a wake-up call, a seminar on the business of being an author. These seminars' aim is to expose Ugandan authors on the global trends and the development in authorship and provide strategic direction for mitigating the challenges caused by COVID-19. Our theme is Authors Recovery Strategy for post-COVID-19. Members, colleagues, authors, and any person on the platform, you are welcome to this seminar. We are going to have our presenters who are going to be, who are already with us. We are waiting for only one presenter, but I will first introduce them one by one, and where I am, you raise your hand so that people can see you. Those who are here, the camera will project on them. We have our first speaker, who is Maggie Gee. Maggie, you can raise your hand so that people see you. That's very good. Has written 17 books, and the latest is The Red Children, a novel about migration and global warming, which is coming out in 2022. She is a professor at Busitema University and is the vice president of the Royal Society of Literature. When she comes in, she will be able to give you more on what she has written. The second speaker, he will raise his hand, is called Professor Elly Nyambobo Sabiti. Professor Sabiti has worked for Makerere University for a number of years in the Department of Agricultural Production, School of Agricultural Sciences, Makerere University. He is basically a professor of crop sciences, agriculture, and Environmental Sciences. He holds a PhD, a master's, all of them in agriculture. He's going to talk about himself more. And he has currently been appointed a professor at Busitema University. In fact, when we started organizing this seminar, he was still in Makerere, but by the time it is taking place, he's now in a different university. He's going to connect himself when he's talking with many other things that he has done. Our third person is Mr. Otim Emmanuel. Mr. Otim Emmanuel holds a BSc in a BSc degree and a postgraduate diploma in education of Makerere University. He has taught chemistry since all his time, and he has been an administrator from being a class teacher up to being a deputy head teacher. But the most important thing is that he is an author of chemistry and is the executive member of UTANA and is our publicity secretary. Lastly, we have Mr. Jonathan Kamwana, who is not yet here, but is on the way coming, who is a commissioner, teacher education, training and development department, Ministry of Education and Sports. So those are our presenters of today, and I want you to join me to welcome them wherever you are for accepting to be part of this panel. Thank you very much, speakers, for accepting to participate in this seminar and for your preparation that you have done. People are waiting to listen to you, what you have prepared for them. So our agenda, as I said, we are going to have a speaker. He will present for 20 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion for 10 minutes, 5 minutes. And thereafter, we'll be calling another speaker. So without wasting time, I want to take this opportunity to invite, I've already spoken about to her, to invite Maggie Gee to take on the floor. You have the protocol on what you should do, how you should introduce yourself and connect it to your speech, and that requires you 20 minutes. And then thereafter, we'll have a reaction. Members who are here and members on the platform, please be ready to ask questions to Maggie. You are welcome, Maggie. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Magara. As he in his kind introduction told you, I am a novelist and a professor of creative writing. And hello to you all from the southeast of England, which is where British written history began. I can see the sea from my study window. It's where migrations and colonizations have always happened to these islands by Neanderthal people, by Belgian tribes, by the Romans and by the Danes. And it's where migrants arrive now. I am very honored to be here talking to Ugandan writers, teachers and academics. I hope there are some writers early in their career or not yet started, and I hope there are plenty of Ugandan women here. I wish I were actually in Uganda with you again. In spring 2022, as Professor Magara said, I will publish my 17th book, whose themes include migration and global warming. They're big themes. I know I am very lucky to have a chance to address them at length through telling a story. I have always taken on big themes of racism and the loss of common land in Britain, for example, in a book called The White Family, which for 7 years no publisher would publish. I am still writing with as much enthusiasm as ever, but with more knowledge of what can go wrong and of what can help me. I know the obstacles are different in Uganda, for example, of what language to write in and in a different publishing landscape, but Uganda has a proud tradition of writing powerfully about our own time. And I'll come back to that and about how it has influenced my writing. What do I have to say about the business of being a writer and of being a writer during and after COVID? I'll talk for about 15 minutes and then I would love to discuss with you and have questions. Basically, I think the business of writing falls into two parts. The first part of writing is mostly done alone. It's about finding the courage to sit down and explore ideas and put them in order. And then to go on doing it, maybe only a page at a time, maybe half a page until the book is finished. Even if you only write half a page a day, you will have a 180-page book within a year. You have to do this brave and lonely work before you worry about publishing it. The second part of the business of being a writer involves being with and learning from other people and people with other skills. We all want to make the book the best we can and get it published. Then we want to spread the news about it as far as we can, and we want to make money from it. The first part of the business of being a writer, sitting down and writing, I've always been able to do, though there are days when I would rather do anything else. I never take being a writer for granted. I am not the child of writers, nor did I know any writers before I became one. I am from the first generation of my family to go to university. My parents would have loved to go to university, and my mother would have loved to be a writer. But almost as soon as I fell in love with reading, I wanted to be a writer. And I have fought to keep on writing in the face of serious obstacles, having books rejected, 2 of my publishers going bankrupt, editors moving in the middle of a contract, and editors dying. If you want to write, you have to work very hard and you have to believe in what you do. For my very first novel, I have needed advice and support from other writers through the writers' organizations or trades unions. My first publisher changed his mind about the contract we had both signed and asked me to give up the agreed £500 advance. It's not unusual. The interests of writers and publishers will never be the same. Too often, they take advantage of writers' desire to get published, especially that of new writers desperate to have a book out. They also take advantage of, in particular, university academics, because they know that worldwide, academics increasingly have to publish in order to move ahead in their university careers. We have to remember, we writers, that publishers have nothing if they have no writers. If writers band together to resist, we are strong. We need fair, clearly understandable contracts with fair arrangements about copyright and about royalties. As you know, it helps to get an advance on royalties, however small, because that money will allow you to take time off the job that probably pays most of the bills and to get on with writing the book. I think the IAF is doing work on this in Uganda with you. I have been helped by our writers' organizations with legal advice, with contractual advice, and with grants. Once in particular, I got a grant when I had an occupational injury, repetitive strain injury, which we call RSI, through using an early computer too much and in the wrong way. You have to be careful that the computer you're using is set up safely for your back and your arms and your hands. Desks that are at the right height for larger men will be far too high for smaller women, and you will need to raise your chair by using a lot of cushions and use a footstool. When I later became more successful, I thought I ought to give back by serving on the boards of, for example, the Royal Society of Literature and PLR, or Public Lending Right. I think that is now being talked about in Uganda and across Africa, the system by which every time someone borrows one of a writer's books from the public library, the writer gets paid from a central government fund. I know there are many problems with how many libraries there are, but this is an important right for writers to have. Like so much else that happens in the life of authors, it can only be done collectively. I might need help again one day, and I think we writers should all take turns to serve in the organizations and help each other. Let us be honest, writers are competitive. When there is not enough pie, everyone fights each other for a slice. But as you all know, it feels a lot better and happier to fight on the same side for a larger pie that we can all share. Also, if we believe in books and writing as an important force for good in education and society, I do, and I hear in what Professor Elisam Magara says that he does too, then we have to encourage good writers by responding generously to good books. I have been helped by other writers, and I have helped other writers by reading early drafts of books and commenting, by giving favourable quotes for book jackets and publicity when new books come out, by asking for other writers' books in bookshops, by mentioning them at events, by sharing other writers' news on social media, and by teaching new books by living writers on university courses in the UK and abroad. Spreading the word and sharing literary knowledge is part of living in a community of writers, which I deeply believe in. What about writing during the pandemic? Writing became both easier and harder during the pandemic here in the UK. For me, because I stopped having to travel to the university to teach and did it online instead, I had more time to write. Also, contract law in Britain may be stronger. Therefore, even if we are not going to the university to teach, even if we're teaching online, we get paid the same. So we retain that part of our income. On the other hand, some of the things that usually help me to write disappeared. The variety given to life by seeing friends or traveling. Some of the physical exercise we all need as writers who spend hours a day sitting still and bent over our work. I don't know if you know this, but in the UK's first lockdown, there was a COVID rule that you could only walk outside for an hour a day. Well, I need to walk more than that. And I am given strength by nature and by the sea, by the sky, by living things. One of the business assets you have as a working writer, and a very important one, is a body that can sustain hours of typing and eyes that can see what you're doing. In my creative writing classes, I always take time to tell people to make sure they do walk each day and do other exercise if they can, so they maintain physical fitness. You can find online excellent exercises to help you with hours of computer use, and it's really worthwhile doing them. Eyes got worse during lockdown with more close focus typing and less opportunity to cast your eyes upon the distant sea or the hills. The physical events where we sell books and where we publicize ourselves and which help writers to make a living all disappeared during lockdown with a great deal of loss of income. Many writers became depressed and less creative. That didn't actually happen to me because I had a deadline and a book to finish, but my husband is a non-fiction writer, a historian published by Faber, and he suffered more. It became impossible to access certain documents or to travel to do research. In the UK, we're still recovering from some of the more serious effects of the pandemic. Universities lost students because there was no student experience on offer, and the student numbers have not come back up again to normal. The art subjects have suffered more than science, and they are getting less government support. I think our government overvalues science and the vocational, whereas actually a strong society needs strong art and becomes a better society for having that. On the other hand, book sales held steady through the pandemic, which astonished us. Fiction did particularly well, as if during the pandemic, people needed more intensely to escape into other lives, as all the real physical doors were closing. And online events blossomed. I did one bookshop event online where an actor read one of my short stories aloud. Around 270 people attended virtually, whereas only a dozen human beings could have fitted into the real physical bookshop. So we always have to learn new business skills, and I think COVID helped us to do that. This hybrid meeting is one sign of it. I learned an enormous amount from Ugandan writers during my 3 stays in your country. I'm talking particularly about books published by the Femwrite Uganda Publishing Collective. They welcomed me 20 years ago, and I've been in touch with many of them since, when back in 2004, a big festival in England funded a writers' exchange between Uganda and England. I went to Kampala in exchange with novelist Ayeta Anne Wangusa, daughter of Timothy Wangusa, who you may know, who was invited to Cheltenham, England. Both of us were commissioned to write stories in these new places. I bought and read over a dozen of the novels published by Femwrite writers, and I was fascinated by their brevity and their urgency. There was a sense that a country which had lived through huge upheavals since the 1960s, and which still had social problems we in the UK share, violence against women, corruption and misogyny in the police, broken families, needed its writers to write directly and powerfully, without wasted words and without mystification. I read and I learned, and I incorporated those lessons into my work. I also learned a lot in Uganda about writers' workshops from what Femwrite did. I went to the weekly Femwrite reading sessions that took place outside in the early evenings in the sunny courtyard. 10 or 12 people, mostly but not all young, aided by a big shared teapot of African milky tea and hot roasted corns on the cob. I saw how important it was for writers to share their work, to receive kind but specific responses, to be encouraged and critiqued, and to learn there was an audience for their work. When I became a university professor, 2 years after my 3rd visit to Uganda, I tried to carry what I'd learned into my own creative writing workshops. Because I knew how difficult it was to share work and how brave writing is, I have a simple rule for those responding to a writer who has just read out their work. I would like to share this with teachers, though it partly came from you in the first place. The people responding to the writer who reads, and all of those should have a chance to respond, do 2 things. First, they tell the writer what they liked and what they think worked well. Then they ask one question about something they're not sure of or didn't like so much. Thus, the critique becomes an open process, a constructive and creative dialogue, not a closed one. This is always part of the business of being a writer. Thank you for what you taught me, Ugandan writers, and thank you very much for listening today. If you have questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thank you very much, Maggie. You have given us what really takes place in the writing process. What she has given us, she has taken us through conceptualizing the idea, writing, sharing your writing. First of all, before writing, reading people's works you don't write what you don't read, you don't write what you don't know. You must read your people's work. Taken us through the editing, which is a big challenge in many of the authors, and then the benefits from the writing, the outputs, the outcomes that comes from the sweat that you have had. So that is coverage of what a business of being a writer, the business of being a writer. So she wants some questions. We have 8 minutes, 5 minutes for questions. So as announced, you will be allowing them to speak. And we have a chat. Please make sure that you put in your chat, and you put your comments if you don't need to raise. So can you allow somebody has a...
Indeed, I can see a question, which is about how to manage the computer to avoid side effects. It's not quite so easy to demonstrate this online, but I can say something that's quite simple. You have to think your position when you're writing at the computer should be a series of right angles. So if your desk is at the right height, your arms should be flat. They shouldn't be like that, and they shouldn't be like that. They should be flat. And your knees, which I'm afraid I can't show you, are should also be at 90 degrees with your feet flat and comfortable on the ground. And I actually got repetitive strain injury so badly from an early Amstrad, I couldn't work for 6 months. And I'm afraid for the first month, my husband had to help me clean my teeth. I just lost the use of my hands. So you have to take it seriously. I'm sure we've all had pains in our shoulders and pains in our hands. And it is partly, I got an ergonomic advisor. I paid a lot to get someone to help me after that. So that's part of the professional business. And in the UK also, in the, the very beautiful British Library, they put in new desks, but they are all at the right height for men, and they're not at the right height for women. So this is something to bear in mind. Adjustable desks are very good, of course. Yeah, but if not, there are ways.
Okay.
Cushions are great.
Okay. Now, Maggie, you have the way how you talk, it appears you know Uganda, but what do you observe as the main challenge of our authors in developing countries, the one you have interacted? You can use examples. What do you think as the main challenge that if it is tackled, we can have a good authorship industry? Thank you.
Well, there are some problems that are a result of history. And of course, many writers would prefer to write in their own local languages. And of course, not that it's easy to publish in English, but colonial history did not help with the development of writing in local languages. On the other hand, English gives you access, if you can get published, to a very large audience, and a shared language helps a country hold together.
Okay. That is
we ourselves, of course, we ourselves, yes. Well, because we were invaded and colonized by the Romans, we also lost our language, and in the end we incorporated it into our language, Latin.
Thank you very much, Maggie. I think
money is always the problem, isn't it? Money is always the problem.
Yes. The other question that I think you need to tell us, and which is you are passionate. I was in you hosted me one time, and we were talking about why a right for remuneration is a solution to authors. Do you think is there any right? Do the authors have a right to be remunerated, or it is a social service that they should write? Thank you.
of course, writers must be remunerated because there is a universal right to payment for work done, and payment for the use of our work is essential, as is copyright. Without those two principles, writers can never make a living. It is a great social service to education and to a civilized state to have people who can read and write and have ideas shared. How else can a country move forward? So yes, we have that right, but we always have to fight for it. And publishers would rather make more money and have writers make less. So this will always be something where we all need to band together. And we need help from our governments very much. And it's worth it because, you know, British writing brings in an enormous amount of money in the end to the state. To have a thriving creative economy in the end is an economic advantage to the country as well as to writers. If writers are spending all their time teaching, it's very hard for them to write. So these things have to be balanced. And I'm so glad that the writers' organizations in Uganda are addressing this.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that is, I know it is unfortunate, and the people want to get money out of the state. So, authors, you are listening, the value that you should get from the writing. So, thank you very much. I think we can clap for her, wherever you are.
Thank you for having me. I'll stay for most of the conference, but I'm teaching later, so I'm sorry I can't stay right to the end.
Okay. But we still have the general discussion, so you have to be there.
I will try my very best.
Yes. Thank you very much. So we are getting our second speaker. Our second speaker, I think, Professor Elisam Sabiti. Professor Elisam Sabiti, I've already introduced him. But what I know about him is he has authored a book in agriculture. He's going to tell us about it from the professorship level to write a book for certificates and the O level. It is a very good opportunity to have a professor of that nature. And the professor, you are speaking to the authors who are looking at you at a very high level, but you have managed to be to bend to be as them. So you are welcome to give us your experience. Professor is going to give us a practical experience of being an author. Maggie has given us some knowledge about what you are supposed to do, but Professor is going to give us a practical experience of being an author. So Professor Sabiti, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Magara, our chair, for having invited me, and also always interesting me in this authors association. And I'm happy to meet colleagues in this business. As I was introduced, I've been a professor at Makerere University for close to 36 years. And recently I retired, having clocked 70 years. When you reach 70, you go home. But I think some universities saw value in me and have taken me over. And that university is Busitema University in the East. It's a young university and it needs senior professors. So that's where I am now. But by the time we started, I was still at Makerere. So really my talk is I will give you a brief background, how I came to like writing. And it started way back when I was in secondary school. We were doing English literature. and we were reading books written by other people. And I would see their names. And as a young man, I would ask myself, will I ever one day also have a book with my name? Because we were taught by English people in my school those days in the 70s, 60s. And most of the books were written by those people who were ahead of us. But I would also look at them and they would refer you, go and read this book written, the author is white, the author is so and so. And I would look at their qualifications. I say, one day, I will also be a writer. And to cut the story short, when I reached the university, in agriculture, we have good training of how to write. The first training, once you are in the first year, at the end of the first year, you go and stay at the farm, and you are asked to observe all the issues at the farm and see how they are trying to solve them and compile a report, and then you are assessed. That was not easy, but it taught me how to observe, how to ask, and then I was able to learn how to compile my information. So when I finished that report, I was so excited because it was by E.N. Sabiti. I said, now I'm beginning to achieve my dream. And then also in the third year, we asked to go and do research. You are given a topic. They call it a special project. You are given a topic, you write the objective, the problem, what you expect to get, and then you go in the field and do research for 10 weeks, and then you come, analyze the data, and produce and write. With the help of your supervisor, you come with a book. This book, you'll be amazed, is my first typed, that time we were typing, first type, second, what I would call second book that has my name. So that way I became much more excited. And then soon after I joined master's program. Immediately I finished my first degree. I started doing scientific research. And in scientific research, we were encouraged to publish articles, not writing books. So my idea of writing books sort of were swallowed by articles, because articles would earn you promotion. So we focused on articles, and I wrote articles for masters, articles for PhDs, so many articles. And these articles, by the way, I would be invited to attend international conferences, travel, free air ticket, free food, free accommodation, and some money. And I was one of those lucky people. I really enjoyed my life because of writing articles. And I covered quite a lot of the global world through writing only articles. Then I moved from articles to book chapters. And finally, when I became a professor in 1998, a friend of mine, Jim Tumsimi, challenged me. He said, "Professor, you have so much in your head. Why don't you think of writing books for agriculture at a level that will be understood by schools, secondary schools, colleges, and even farmers?" I said, "But how can I do that? My level of writing is for the international scientists." But he said, what does an ordinary Ugandan benefit from those? So he gave me a challenge. And he said, even when you are ready, for me, as a publishing house, we are ready to sponsor you, write a book. But then he said, what you do, get in touch with one of the students you supervise who are teaching in secondary schools, who teach agriculture in secondary schools. Tell them your hard facts. For them, they will know how to make the ideas to their level. And that way, you working with your mentees, whom you supervised and mentored, working with your mentees, you will be able to come up with a middle ground book that will be accepted by society. I said, is that easy? But then as a scientist and somebody, because now he awoken my previous dream of becoming an author. Because when you have book chapters, the book is not, your name doesn't appear there as the author. So I said, now I think the opportunity has come. Since I have all the literature, all the information on agricultural sciences or research, it's a matter of putting these things, give them to my mentee, who was actually, he had finished a master's under my supervision. It's a secondary school teacher. And so it became easy. So we started writing that book. But writing that book was not so easy. The first draft, we produced 700 pages, can you imagine? But they realized that we were combining many areas, livestock, crop, and then economics. So there was no way of combining all of those. And then they had to ask us to split that book in three books. And I can assure you, what I learned in authoring books, you need patience. Because it took us about 6 years to finish these 3 books. There is this process of reviewing by the people. Sometimes I looked at them as if as junior to me, and yet they are reviewing my work. I would get frustrated. I said, but they are diluting my work. But because that is the business, for them, they knew what would sell when this book is done. And eventually, we were able to succeed and produce 3 books, which are now found on Amazon. If you want them there, it's Agriculture, Principles and Practices for Secondary Schools and Colleges, Crop Production, 2010, Volume 1. The next volume is the Farm Structures, Machinery, and Agricultural Economics. The third volume is Animal Production. Because in Uganda, we have an integrated agriculture, crops, animals, and of course, you cannot remove economics and stores. So the books became a hot cake. They were bought by schools. They were bought by even farmers. I have a farmer nearby in this region, in Kampala, in the urban areas, who one day found me in my little farm and said, I have come to show you the book. He's an ordinary farmer. And he told me, this book you wrote has helped me to come out to do a good agriculture for my bananas and my goats. So I was very excited. Now, this book has enabled me to get my royalties. I am earning some living. So even if I'm now retired, I know there is some money to come from this book. It's my copyright. That is what excites me. It's mine. You cannot own it unless I authorize you. So it's my copyright, and it gives me great pleasure. And I got more excited when one day I received a letter that your books have been recognized by this association, because they have done research on them and they found that they are widely read by countries, by schools in the East African community and well beyond. So that gave me a sense of pride and satisfaction at my level as a professor, an international professor, contributing to the people who are not my level, but who are able to read and understand. In other words, my complicated jargon, my complicated equations have been simplified to benefit students in secondary schools, to benefit farmers, to benefit teachers to use this book as reference, and to benefit society. And I think that's a big contribution from my side. What I find challenging, personally, to begin with, even in all my contributions articles, I had never looked at authorship as a business to make money, probably because I always had funding all the time to do what I wanted. I would write research, get funding, do the research, and then publish. It is now that the trend has come, especially online journals, open online journals, which demand money to publish your article. That's a big challenge. But in our times, many journals did not ask for money. They asked for quality publication. But now, seems authorship books have become a business. The one who wants to publish your book needs money. The journals need money. So now we as authors, it's time now also to demand for money from our books, because we have collected all this knowledge. Because if you do not write information in a book, it is dead. It's not utilized. So therefore, we are doing all the donkey work. It's time that we agree that really authors should be paid for the knowledge they produce, because we produce a lot of knowledge. Right now, I am preparing a book on waste management, because waste management is a serious problem in urban centers. And there is no one interested in that, but that book will help so many administrators, for many students who are doing masters and so on, to benefit from that book, because I have the knowledge. And if I'm not paid, I may not write it. So really, writing is an important aspect of business. Now, during COVID, it was really a challenge. I had some manuscripts for my students. They were not for books now. They are for supervision of students. But because we were scattered and we are beginning to learn this online technology, it sort of clamped us down. Well, you need money to buy data. Here, data is very expensive. They have even put a tax on the data. And I think that tax by government should be removed for us academicians and students if we have to do our work properly. You put a data for 50,000, by the end of you finish, it's gone. And so government should reconsider this taxation of data for internet to allow us to contribute to knowledge, because the policy of our country is a knowledge-based economy. So where are they going to get the knowledge? It's from us who are going to be the authors of books. So in a way, it has sort of affected our writing, but also it has also made it much easier now that we are in. Now we can collaborate. I can see you, Maggie, Professor Maggie. Technology is good. We can now assemble and share what we really want to do. On top of being an author, I've also been editing. I'm on editorial of a number of journals. So I also do editorial work. I do book reviews. I do vetting of papers for promotion. And so for me, it's all kind of things mixed together. I have not yet, since I'm still in academics, I have not yet said, look, let me become a writer or an author. Like I still have in my mind to produce a book about the agricultural history in Uganda. It has interested me. I've seen how agriculture has shifted. We need to know the history, but I can't do it when I'm still in the academics, in the academic world. So my challenge is, how do I balance the academics and the authorship? But otherwise, what I have found exciting in being an author is people accepting your book. And for the last 10 years, we produced this book. No one has challenged it. So we did it with integrity. We followed international publishing regulations. So now our book has never been challenged, and that gives me confidence that now I can engage fully in authorship. And of course, what also helped me, we have to identify a gap. We found that agricultural books in Uganda were scarce. So like in every other business, you must fill a vacuum. You must produce a product that is going to fill a vacuum. So my book, or books with my co-authors, who are aiming at filling a gap in the education sector. No reference materials, no quality books. So there are this gap. And then from there, you plan, you really design how to publish the book. But in this time, what is exciting is how I used my former student to lower my knowledge together with the publishers who were able to come up with this very useful book, which is very contributing to the education of our country. So really, I think that's what is I have learned from this, writing the books, and I think I will continue developing more interest in writing books, and especially when you have colleagues like Professor Magara always calling you, giving you a challenge, there is no way you can fold your arms. You will always be part of the process of the industry. So I would like to stop here and submit my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sabiti. I think that is really practical, and he has taken us through his educational career, which is connected with writing. You press yourself into what you are doing. I always have a problem with people complaining, so much work, but I thought that would be an opportunity. The more work you given, the more opportunity you get where to write. So I think that is a challenge to the author. Don't complain, teaching is so hard, you have some, but that is the more knowledge that you gain and the more way. Professor Sabit, I think you are interested, and what I know, what you have been doing is mentorship. How do you think we can model mentorship in authorship? Not necessarily being your supervisor, supervisee, but kind of a model that can work for people in a developing country or in Uganda that we can use. You can use it to either institutionalized or else, but a kind of a model of mentorship program for authors. What do you think from experience?
Thank you so much for that question. Actually, apart from authoring, teaching, I am one of the mentors in this area. I mentor quite a lot. So when I'm supervising, there is a difference between supervising and mentorship. So when I have my students, I supervise, we follow academic principles. But during that supervision, I also bring in mentorship. So that at the end of the core of the program, we have developed a partnership. We have developed good relationship. I have seen in many cases here, when students finish their master's or their PhD, they are cursing their supervisors, and that cuts the connection. But with me, it never happens. My relationship with my former graduate students who happen to be teaching in schools, in universities, will remain colleagues, because through mentorship, encouraging them to do ABCD beyond when they finish their degrees. What are they going to contribute to society apart from the ordinary teaching? Have you ever considered writing a book, a pamphlet, a brochure, simple things, share? Now, if, for example, Dr. Katuromunda, who is now lecturing, is now a senior lecturer here at Makerere, if I had not mentored him properly, we would not have produced this book. I must be frank, because I would have found it hard to bring the knowledge to the knowledge of secondary schools, of BTVET, and colleges. So because as he was doing his master's, he was a secondary school teacher, and even when he was doing his PhD, he was still a secondary school teacher And since we had developed through mentorship, good relationship, we were able to write this book. And he also went to look for another teacher that would help come up with a book. So mentorship has a big role when you are supervising, so that when you finish, it is not a dead end.
Okay, thank you very much, Sabit. Now, you talked about Jim Tumsimi. Where do you see, apart from having knowledge in the head, how do you advise the young writers that the connections and are very important for somebody to give you advice? Just a one-day advice has come out with 3 books. So how do you advise the writers to take relationship very important? Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. Definitely, relationships are very, very important, or networking, good networking. Jim Tumsimi, we studied together all the way and became friends. We came to Makerere together. And so for him, he branched into writing cartoons, he used that to make us laugh. And then he started the publishing, very difficult way. He started with the New Vision and so on. So you can see that because of our friendship, he was able to come to me. Actually, we were somewhere in a club and he asked me, he challenged me. In fact, it was a challenge as a friend. I was a professor, he's not. But because we are friends, we had developed a long-term relationship, friendship. And now for him, you see, he's at a level to publish. He has a recognized publishing house. For me, I don't have. So he said, look, let us see how we can take some of your knowledge from your head to help the nation. So we need to have partnership to develop relationship. Don't be an island as a young writer. Don't say, look, for me, I have to do my work. I don't need any advice. No, develop friends. You never know when this friend will come to your rescue or will help you. So it is very important.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. I think whoever you are, clap for him. He has given us that insight. We'll proceed to a third speaker. A third speaker is known to many of the teachers, and is called Mr. Emmanuel Otim. Mr. Emmanuel Otim is a deputy head teacher at City High School. I think I have interacted with him before, but he's our publicity secretary. So I will leave this chair and he's going to take the chair and lead us through. But when your time comes, make sure that he stops because I will not have his microphone. Thank you very much. Yes, just speak.
Okay, thank you, Professor, the chair and the moderator of this session, of this seminar. I'd like to say either good morning or good afternoon, depending on the time zones where we are. So the participants of this seminar, the business of being an author, I have a challenge of looking at balancing teaching, the teaching career, and authorship. Now, I'd like to begin by thanking the previous presenters for their input and insight into the publishing sector and the authoring of books. Professor Maggie, please, we share a lot in common that regards the authors and the authorship. Now, in Uganda here, I'm going to speak mainly about balancing teaching, the teaching career, and authorship, because most of the authors that we have associated with UTANA are mainly authors from secondary schools as we try to expand to other areas or other sectors. So I've been introduced as Otim Emmanuel. I'm a deputy teacher. I've been a class teacher, subject teacher, and now I'm into administration, but I am still active in the classroom. I teach as I supervise colleagues who are authors. Some of them have joined us on this seminar via the various platforms, while others are present with us here. Now, being a teacher, we think about imparting education to our learners, and we think that while we are imparting knowledge and skills and building character among the young ones as teachers, we should also be thinking about doing something else that is going to support us as individuals in our livelihood. Now you'll discover that an author is expected to be a writer of a book or an article or a newspaper, as you have put it. It could even be a play or a poem, as Professor Maggie, I think, is good at this. We think that anybody who participates in those activities is an author. And so a teacher, by virtue of the fact that he prepares notes and content for the learners, is actually participating indirectly in the business of authorship. And so we believe that with the kind of training that the teachers have received in pedagogical issues, they are able to do their job of teaching. Now, what is expected of a teacher in a secondary school in Uganda? One is the teacher must devote time to his or her duty. The teacher is expected to devote time to his or her duty, whether that duty is delegated or the duty is just automatic in the form of the teaching process. So we find that teachers most often have to grapple with so many aspects of the teaching methodology that they don't find time to write. But it's good now that we're coming out to encourage teachers to write. And Professor Maggie said, half a page is good enough, or a full page is good enough, as long as you're committed to that process on a daily basis, whenever you have time. So we are here to call upon teachers to participate in the business of authorship, because at the end of the day, if you have conceptualized an idea or a topic, as Professor Elly has also hinted on it, you'll be able to build up something that could be published. Now, as teachers, we are governed by certain professional code of conduct that demands that the teacher should devote his time to making schemes of work, a plan on how you are going to execute your teaching, a lesson plan. The teachers are expected to make work plans on how they are going to do their work in the course of the term. They are expected to make teaching aids. They are expected to do so many things, including assessing the learners and many other things that consume a lot of their time. So we imagine that many teachers find themselves deep into these activities that sometimes they fail to find time to write. But we are trying to see how to encourage the teachers to get in the business of writing so that they can earn a living out of it. We also find teachers in Uganda being told to do remedial teaching. At the end of the day, you are supposed to occupy the learners, and so that eats into your time for teaching. There are quite a number of things that we do as teachers in Uganda. We conduct all examinations in the schools. We are supposed to be obedient to our supervisors. Whenever they give you an assignment to do some other extra work, you're supposed to do it. And so that is likely to encroach on the time that you could probably utilize in writing some work to earn a living. We are supposed to be good record keepers in terms of keeping the records of the marks of the learners from an assessment exercise. All of that is part of the work that the teachers do in this country. We are also expected to enrich ourselves as teachers by visiting bookshops, by looking at journals, by collecting magazines, especially in the areas of the subjects where we teach, so that we can enrich our work as teachers, so that we have something good that the learners can get from us. We are expected to volunteer. When the head teacher asks you, say, can you do this for me? You are supposed to say yes, so that you are sent to do that thing or that work for him. We're supposed to show personal responsibility in terms of dressing etiquette, the way we talk and all of those. We're supposed to relate well with colleagues. Professor Elly said we need each other. So if you are antagonistic to your colleagues in the department or in the school, you might not find a favorable ground in which to do some other work with the help of those who can mentor you and also those who can support you in one way or the other. Teachers are well-respected people in society. I guess even in the UK it happens, or everywhere, teachers are well-regarded. And so teachers act as a bridge between the school community and the community outside there. And so we're supposed to be very careful the way we attend to parents as a teacher. We're supposed to abide by the terms and conditions of our service in Uganda here as teachers. So all of this might have an impact on a teacher who wants to take up authorship as a job or something that is going to help him in the future. Now, it has been hinted by the previous presenters that textbook publishing is not a simple thing. It involves writing by the author. It involves editing of the work by the editor, whom Professor Elly referred to as it was not really into what they were doing. Maybe he didn't understand what they were doing, but eventually they became helpful. Then we have the aspect, the angle of the publisher. Most of us authors in Uganda do not have the money to put into publishing our work. We rely on the goodwill or so-called goodwill from the publishers. So you find that the network of you producing work in Uganda as an author may involve you as the person, involves the editor who is employed by the publisher, and the publisher who injects the resources that way you need to see your work come out at the end of the day. And so that poses quite a number of challenges. One, authors may not be skilled in typing their own work. So the work is done by a typesetter employed by the publisher. When the typesetters are typing, you find that there are a lot of mistakes in your work. The work gets distorted along the way. Somebody may not understand what exactly you mean and decides to type what they understand. We also have endless proofreading of the work because you have to eliminate mistakes almost up to zero. But you may not do that because sometimes you find that some mistakes escape uncorrected. Corrections of the work is another task that the authors go through. Then you find that when the work has finally been approved, the publisher may not reveal the correct number of copies of the books that have been printed. Will not reveal. If they do, partially. If they do fully, then you are very lucky. So in Uganda here, we're dealing with that aspect where we find that the copies of the book, your book, cannot be fully declared to you so that you begin to calculate what to expect from a publisher. Then the effect of that is that when the books are sold, you may not realize the income that you should have expected if the books were fully, the number of copies were fully declared. So there is issue of transparency. I don't know on the side of Professor Maggie how things are where you are, but in Uganda here, we have quite a number of issues regarding transparency of the number of copies printed and the income that accrues from the work that you have actually done. Also, we have a challenge of the publishers taking 90% of the income that has accrued from the books, and you are given only 10%. Now that 10% is supposed to be shared maybe among us 2 or 3 or 4 authors, depending on how many participated in the exercise. And so what you expect is watered down to quite a small percentage. Professor Sabiti, may you unmute? Kindly please unmute. Kindly unmute so that we can proceed. From your phone, could you please unmute? Yes, as the other challenge that we have is many of my colleagues out there may believe me or not, it is hard and very, very difficult to get a contract signed with a publisher. They'll keep telling you stories here and there. But for those publishers who sign contracts with their authors, we commend you and pray that you continue along that line. But for most authors, you will discover that they have no contracts. They simply wait to be called to receive some small amount of money whenever it is available. Then there is the issue of inconsistency in paying royalties. 8 months down the road, you are called, you have a check or you have some money. You may spend another 1 year without being informed whether you have any money or not. So there is no specific period in which you should expect some royalty to come your way because of lack of signing the contracts. Now, with that said, I want us as authors to reflect on the following. Originally, the Teachers' Professional Code of Conduct did not allow the teachers to engage in any other business so that they can attend to the learners. They can do their job of teaching. But now we are seeing a situation where the teachers need to supplement the income that comes from the salary that the government pays to them. And so we are trying to encourage teachers to look at the effects of the post-COVID-19 pandemic on themselves and to their families and begin thinking about doing authorship as a way of earning income. Professor Elly has shared with you and Professor Maggie have attested to the fact that they have benefited from the benefits of writing, of authoring books. And so we are also encouraging that the teachers now need to think seriously about authoring books, maybe in the subjects they teach, maybe in other topical areas that affect our society, so that we can all, we can benefit from the gift that we have of trying to share knowledge with our learners and also our colleagues. That's the first challenge, is we need to consider authoring books as a way of earning income as individuals. 2, we have the challenge of the changing curriculum. Curriculum has been changed in Uganda here to the now new lower secondary school curriculum. But even within that curriculum, as the COVID has affected us for the 2 years that the children have not been in school, of recent, there has been talk of again freezing, compressing that curriculum. I don't know to what. So if you are an author, what are you writing on? Are you writing on the broad curriculum that was released some time back? Or you are going to be writing on the compressed curriculum? Will this curriculum be opened up later on? It's a challenge. So what are we dealing with at this material time? 3, we have the competition from the online books. Online books are coming at full speed. Shall we continue writing and printing the hard copies? Is something that we need to reflect on. Number 4, do we have cordial working relations with our supervisors? Are you in a good working relation with your head teacher and your colleagues in the departments that you belong to? Most often, you'll discover that when you want to do your work, you might have to ask for permission from the head teacher to go somewhere and maybe write or edit your work. You've been called by the publisher to go and edit work. You just don't escape from school. You have to ask for permission. So are we having those cordial working relations with our supervisors and colleagues? Do they support you in the process of writing? Number 5, what scope are we looking at? Are we focusing mainly on just academic work, the subjects that we teach? Or can we go an extra mile and pick out a topic? Both Professor Maggie and Professor Elly have said that you need to identify an area which you can write in. So do we just stop at writing for biology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, English language, history, or we can pick up something outside our subjects? And if we have the knowledge and the content and the material, we should be able to expand our scope. So we need to think, do we confine ourselves or we break out and look at other areas where we can write something that is beneficial to our society? We also need to reflect on the impact of the COVID-19, just like the previous presenters have mentioned it. Have we just been seated, enjoying ourselves, if we indeed we enjoyed ourselves, or we should have utilized this time to do some writing? I think Professor Maggie said she used that time to learn a few more things and also to write. Number 7, what is the impact of the loss of income for those of us whose books were published? The publisher has not been selling, especially in Uganda here. What is the impact on our income? Are we ready to continue losing funds, or we need to go another direction? Equipment is another challenge. Do we have the laptops to use? Even while you're at home, you can be typing a page or two. Do we have the necessary ICT skills that are going to help us do our work and minimize the development of the typesetters? Do we have the resources to invest into publishing our work? If they are not there, we need to source for areas where we can get the resources. Supposing you are better paid by government, would you continue writing? There are people who look at salary as the ultimate thing. Would you continue writing? I hear the science teachers are expecting 4 million per month. Will it stop you from writing? It's a personal decision that you need to look at. So members, colleagues, those who have been listening to me, we need to reflect on some of these challenges and some of these questions. And if we can, let's find solutions You never know, UTANA might be a solution to part of your issues. And that's why we're saying that we need to put our heads together, think about the way forward so that we can all earn from authorship as our line of sort of investment. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, team. Can you add another hand clap? I think that I like this last question. If you are earning, if you are if you are better paid, would you continue with writing? I think that is a challenge. I don't know whether you had written or it came out. That is a very good question that we need to answer by the time we leave here. So it will know what kind of people we are dealing with. Are we dealing with the people who are looking at money, or there are many other benefits in writing? Thank you very much. I think because of time, we will get have question and answer at the end, and so that you raise the questions there for a team. Maybe if there is one, can you, somebody from here, can you raise the question? Because we have allowed from outside. Any question that you want to ask? I'm happy to inform you that the commissioner has come and is going to speak to you. I think that's what you have been waiting for. But before, I want two questions that maybe you can hear and see, Mr. Commissioner, these are teachers who have been selected among all the teachers to come and listen to you. But then just two questions before you talk to us. Yeah, hello? Just two questions to Tim's presentation or their whichever, but we want the commissioner to listen to what we have been talking about since morning.
Thank you very much. My name is Elly Nyambobo, teacher and also an author. I would like to thank especially Mr. Otim for his presentation. It was an actual contextualization of what we, the teacher authors, are going through. I think probably saying this out of, if I'm not mistaken, experience, Mr. Otim. The things you spoke about are the exact things that you are going through. I also wanted to listen to how UTANA, probably this will come sometime towards the end. How is UTANA going to come in to address some of these challenges, hand with us to address some of these challenges, just the way you have highlighted them? What does UTANA have in the offering to help us overcome some of these challenges that have been highlighted?
Okay.
Thank you.
Another question?
Thank you very much, UTANA. And rightly so, Mr. Otim has, for example, spoken something about the introduction of the new curriculum. As authors, this is a concern for me. Have we conceptualized the new curriculum? Have we identified the gaps? By the time the government or the National Curriculum Development Center thinks about a new curriculum, certainly there must be gaps in the old curriculum. As authors, are we able to identify and fill the gaps? The other thing talked about was about competition from online books. And rightly so, yes, Are we going to just talk about them? Are we just going to talk about the competition? My thinking would be that yes, if there is a competition, let's talk about it and complete the trends. And if the online tools are now part of the trend of authorship, so rather than talk about the competition, let's complete the trend. And if you can publish online, yes. And lastly, the very rightly spoke about the publishers, relationship between the publishers and the authors, especially in terms of contracts, in terms of payments, in terms of that you receive something and then wait, in terms of realities, yes. As authors again, I will put this to ourselves. Are we thinking about our own independence? How do we mitigate this challenge that, I'm going to spend my time, I'm going to put this knowledge together for this person or for this company, and at the end of the day, the realities are not very clear. So, as publishers, I think it's very crucial that we think about our own independence by coping with the current.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You can answer where you are.
I would like to thank the participants, Chair. I thank the participants for their comments. I received the appreciation from one of the members, and I thank the second colleague for raising those issues. I think for everybody else who is listening out there, we have a task. And the biggest task is on the new curriculum. Definitely, there are gaps which are meant to be addressed by the new curriculum. And we, as authors, before we, or when we are writing, or before we write, we're expected to identify those gaps and write books that are in conformity with the new curriculum. The new curriculum is competence-based. A competence is something that somebody, a student, is expected to acquire by the time he or she has learned a certain body of content. So it is the onus is on the authors to identify those gaps and write books which are in conformity with the new curriculum. I would like to thank you very much for identifying that. Of course, so many people participate in writing books for publishers, but when the books go for vetting, you will discover that some books drop out. Why do they drop out?
Come on, answer that question. Then, yes.
Sorry, our participants from elsewhere. I was thanking the colleagues who have raised questions here about my presentation. One, it was an appreciation. I would like to acknowledge the appreciation and to thank you for acknowledging my presentation. And two, one of the colleagues was asking about the new curriculum. Are we able to identify the gaps that are in the new curriculum so that as we write, we are in conformity with it? And I agree that before an author writes, he or she should understand the curriculum, identify what is expected of an author, and write in line with what is expected of that particular author. And I was saying that in response that most books always do not meet the criteria for vetting, because when they compare what is expected with what has been written, you'll find that the books are way out of line of what is expected. And so you find that somebody else who has understood what is expected takes the day and that book is approved for use in our country here. Now, the issue of online is coming on seriously, and I think I'm in agreement with my colleague who raised this, the participant who raised this question, that we have to embrace online publication. And since the publishers most often have the funds to inject into these projects, my hope is that they should be preparing to embrace online publication of books so that we compete favorably, or we take our share of the market in terms of having our work online instead of producing textbooks that are hard copies that are going to sit on the shelves. As authors who are here and those who are out there, those who are inside the room here, we're going to have a meeting immediately after these presentations so that we discuss a few areas of the way forward, how we can go forward in spite of the challenges that we are facing. The issue of contracts is very, very crucial. I heard Professor Maggie mention something about it. Members, it is really, really serious that the publishing houses ought to sign a contract with the author even before any work is produced, so that you review the contract along the way. But that has not been done by most publishers. Instead, you continue happening here and there. So the suggestion from a colleague is that we have our own independence. I believe UTANA is going to drive us towards becoming independent. At one point when we were starting, Professor, you proved me wrong. We had talked about buying our own printer. So we need to think about those who are affiliated to UTANA benefiting from UTANA becoming an independent organization from the other publishers, so that we see what terms and conditions or how we can help our authors produce their work without being cheated here and there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tim, can you clap for him? Yes, that was good. He's a teacher, he's the author, and he's the one who motivated us when we started. I remember in 2012, he's the one who gave, his question was the sweat and what? The pain and what really his speech motivated us, how can we solve these pains? And we started the association. Thank you very much for continuing with that. So I will proceed to introduce the next speaker. I don't know Max, whether Max is online. We were working with Max and the assistant, and he had requested me to say one word to introduce the commissioner. If you are around, please speak, and if you are not, I'm going to introduce him. Yes, I think he's not around. So I want to take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Jonathan Kamana. Mr. Jonathan Kamana is a Commissioner of Teacher Education Training and Development. Can you welcome him? Since we started in 2013, we registered, we have been working with the Ministry of Education and Sports. But in the last, from 2020, we developed an idea of having a collaboration with the Ministry of Education to sort out some of the things you are raising here. And we communicated to the PS, and the PS has been interacting with us from the former PS up to the new PS, and then he directed our request to the Commissioner, Teacher Education Training and Development, And I want to inform you that your delegate, the works that your assistant that you gave me to work with me has been working with me. We have been discussing this. We planned this workshop together. And I also talked to him, I think, last evening. He was supposed to check in, but he's out of the country. And this is how far we have gone as far as the purpose of working together is concerned. So you are welcome to address these people who are here, teachers, authors, who are teachers whom you train, but now they are teachers, they are authors, but then we have other people online that are listening to you. So we wanted to come here and give your address, and then a few questions will come. Thank you. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Professor. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your kind introduction. I think I've mentioned my name very well, Jonathan Kamwana, teacher like you, and I'm happy to be with you at this very important interaction of authors. I have had about 3 meetings before, and I jumped out of a meeting to come and make my presentation. So, Professor, I'm sorry, I wanted to be with you from morning, but I couldn't join you because of equally important attachments and engagements at the ministry. And the meeting which began at 10, I thought it would be over in 1 hour, but continued on and on. So I jumped out of it, and I hope when I get back, I'll get them still in session so that I can do other things for the close of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to talk about according to the program they gave me, and I think you have the program. Because I want to be very strict on what I've been assigned to do, the education sector strategic direction in promoting writing and authorship. In my presentation, I will have an introduction. I'll talk about the national strategy on education. Then I'll look at the legal framework, the challenges, and what is that strategic direction, and the perspective of Ministry of Education and Sports. And I will conclude at that. So my presentation may not answer any of your aspirations because you may expect much from me, but I'll be very, very brief and I'll talk about what I have planned, not what I have not planned. Now I'll look at, from my introduction, look at the global perspective. What is the agenda for education? You have what we call the Sustainable Development Goals. And all of you, you are aware of agenda number 4, which is talk about quality education. And if you look at quality education, this is a key to what we call the human-centered capital that we need. And this is an agenda for the whole world. Sustainable Development Goal number 4, quality education. And we are basing all our undertakings as ministry on this agenda. And when you look about quality education, you look at the teacher, you look at the resources, you look at the parents, you look at the children. And eventually, you look at the material, the practical materials these children are going to use to ensure that they acquire what they're supposed to acquire in terms of knowledge, skills, values, competencies. And when I came to this team, we'll talk about the current curriculum, where we are talking about values, skills, and competencies, which are usually not examined. And eventually, how do we develop materials to help children acquire the competencies that are used, that are valued in life as you go out, rather than the knowledge which may not be of value after you have left school. So for example, knowing that speak with the first white person to the source of the Nile in 1862. That's knowledge. But what does it give you? Help you to live. It's a competence. So that's kind of thing we're trying to look at it from the national perspective. Now, when we look at the national perspective, the strategy of education, as education, we have to be in line with other frameworks of the country, like we have Vision 2040, where do we want to take this country? We have the National Development Plan 3. Then, how have we placed ourselves as education? Produce the human capital that is required to transform this country from a peasant economy to a middle income country. So education is a key factor in moving this country from a peasant society to a modern and prosperous country. And we cannot achieve this if we really do not have the resources in terms of the human resource, who are the teachers, and the material that we use, those are textbooks, that can help us, our children, to be able to achieve the learning outcomes that are really needed for us to transform the country. Now, there is always a very big complaint about our education system, especially in terms of our products. You can say, for example, in Uganda, there are very many hotels being constructed, but we have not been able to produce people serving these hotels, that these hotel owners have to go and look for manpower from Kenya. Most of our hotels have workers, the chefs, the receptionists, and all those who handle most of the sensitive promotion, even like here where we are. The marketing manager is a Kenyan. Surely with all the universities doing marketing here in Uganda, we need to bring somebody from Kenya. I'm not being tribalistic, but I'm just being saying nationalistic. Did we really get manpower from outside? But all this comes from what we do as a country in terms of the strategies we have in education. Let me now look at what has the country done legally, right from the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. When you look at the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, it is very clear as far as education is concerned that the state shall take appropriate measures to afford every citizen equal opportunity to attain the highest education standards possible. And this is very clear in Article 3 of the Constitution, and the education is a right. As you may realize, education is a right. So what we are contributing to in terms of writing materials is promote the right to education. So we talk about education, we talk about access, we're talking about equity, but also we're talking about equality. In most cases, we are working out with numbers. When we had the lockdown, we had 15 million learners out of school. The question that we need to ask ourselves, was it equal opportunity to all? Those who are lame, those who are disabled, those who are girls, those who are in the disadvantaged regions. If you are, say, for example, in Amodat, you have been in the Karenga, you have been in those places where there are no schools at all. Are we giving equal opportunities? But then the quality. And I think for us here as authors, we're talking about the kind of quality of education that we're going to give our people, those 15 million learners, in terms of authorship of the core textbooks, but also the reference materials. Because what about the core textbooks, which are going to be to get people to pay you, ONCD, or Ministry of Education, take them, but also we need to look at the reference materials that go along to support the quality education that we're supposed to give to our children. So this one, the government has given this one as a guarantee: quality education, freedom from discrimination, and access to education. But also you may realize that we have, as government, we have revised the government white paper for 30 years. Government has been given a direction of what it should do in the education sector from the government white paper of 1992. Being reviewed right now, there is a commission to review so that we may get another paper to direct what government should do in form of education. But it's very clear in this government white paper of 1992, it comes out with a very broad aim to education, to promote scientific, technical, cultural knowledge, skills that we needed to promote development and national goals and objectives of education here are forging national unity and harmony. So as we write our books, as authors, we need to know where we have come from in education and where we need to go. If we were doing the Oxford English course, then we came to Nairo English course. That is now I'm talking about the teachers in the primary school. Which course are we taking through our learners as far as English is concerned for the primary schools? Those of you who went, you did Bright, AK Bright, that is that book you know very well, primary schools. Then we came to Norway. Then we came to Nairo English course, NEC. Now, which course are we taking our learners through? This is what we should be focusing on as we move forward. Uganda must attain the sustainable development goals and the rapid human economic advancement of its people. And as you look at our vision as Minister of Education, it talks about quality education and sports for all. That's the vision of our ministry. Talk about quality education, meaning learners who get to our institutions must get the instructional materials, must get the quality teachers that we need in the classroom using the conventional approach. Because originally, the education system and the curriculum has been constructed in a manner that there must be a teacher, there must be a learner, instructional material, and there must be the four walls. When COVID came in, we are now thinking about hybrid approaches, about home study materials, which are not there. Now, authors, the home study materials are not there. These are the emerging area of introducing self-learning materials so that our learners can now start knowing that in the case of COVID, because when we went to digital, you know, electronic approach, we have the challenge of the electronic approach. How many of our parents have TVs? You know this from the National Household Survey. I think about 8% of our country, of our population, they have access to TVs. I don't know how many have access to radios, about 20% of our population. But with the home study materials, you can have access. But this emerging area, NCDs has been grappling, calling up writers, and in fact, they even came with their mattresses and they had to spend nights, days and nights burning candles. I wonder whether they are properly edited, whether they are properly aligned with the curriculum. But this emerging area for the authors, going forward, I think we need to promote home study materials for our learners as part of the curriculum for the learners. We need to develop this. Students learn on their own. But it's not something we had prepared our children for. Not even the teachers were prepared for it. But going forward, it's now going to become an issue that we need to look at. How do we promote as writers home study materials going forward from this kind of workshop? Because the emerging area, and we need to exploit and see how do partners, how do other people come and support us to promote. Because even if we reopen in January, we are talking about somebody has been S5 for 6 weeks, the 5 weeks, going for progression. You know, we have had recession in education. We are going to run away from this. And we have lost, if you talk about the World Bank report about the loss in education. As a country, we have had the highest period of school lockdown in the whole world, over 77 weeks. Some children, our children have not been able to access, apart from a few tertiary institutions, but there are children, learners who have been at home, and this one has brought regression. And with this regression in place, we need to go for progression. And we need to strategically package ourselves to help the learners catch up by using hybrid approaches. Talk about home study materials, talk about projects, talk about writing, accelerated learning. And I think this is the right time for you people now to come on board and promote education. The only valuable aspect we have as in Uganda is education. So when we help our children learn very well, it will be very, very important for us. Now, as a department, we have a strategic plan. It has 3 major policy directives, which we talk about: achieve equitable access, relevant and quality education and training. I've talked about quality education and training, whereby learners have lost. Now I can imagine a doctor, when we are in S5, we try to develop competencies in biology lessons to learners on how to do surgery, but this time they do it on rats, they do it on frogs. But we are preparing a doctor who is going to do surgery on the brain or the heart of a human being. But this student has missed these pre-activities and want to put him in S6 to do biology and give him a few concepts, and then he's going to go to the university to do medicine and surgery. But he missed on the basic skills of how you can dissect a rat. Dissecting a rat in itself, not punishing this child to say dissect a rat, look at the system of the rat. We are preparing this student for human surgery. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to continue dissecting rats, you're going to handle it on human beings. So what are we talking about? We're talking about quality education and closing up the gap. We want to ensure delivery of relevant and quality education and training in the country and enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of education and sports services at all levels. These are the key objectives, and as the Department for Teaching Education, we try as much as possible to prepare teachers that way and see that they are able to deliver on their mandate. We have had the challenges, and I know you're going to talk about them in teaching education. Teachers need to be motivated, but they're not motivated. They're writing instructional materials and they're developing textbooks. Our teachers use textbooks in the field there. We have been giving out books, and quite often I go for supervision, even at higher institutions. You go to a primary teachers college, just somehow we gave out books in 2017. Some of them have never been used by any student. They're in the library. They even lock. Those books don't touch them. We create fear. Because we give instructions. If a book gets stolen, you must buy a new one. These books are supposed to be used by learners. The policy of ministry is very clear. Books in the hands of the what? The learners. But you even get a padlock, get a very good cupboard, lock the books inside, and the children do not have access to the books. So writers, write your materials for keeping. There's only one book for the class teacher, and then the chalkboard. And you teachers, I think you know this very well. You don't allow children to freely use the material. No wonder they're not writing, they're not interested in them. Because you give them a lot of fear to touch a book. If you tell, these are children, they are even written on pupils' books, not teachers' books. They're brought for pupils. I remember when I went to Makerere for the first time, I was given books. There was what we called a book bag. I picked the books of the university, I put in my bag, and I from the book bank was from the department. And I had these books, use them and I use them anytime I read and do what. I don't know that the book bank system is there at Makerere. And when I went for my postgraduate course at Makerere once again, this time they said, you go to the department and pick all the books you need for your course. And I was able to do my postgraduate course for 2 years, the master's, because I had all the books I wanted. I don't know what's happening now, because you will refer to the books. You want to get information, get from here. By the time the topic being discussed, you have something, you just come and discuss and present. But you teachers at the same time, you also become a problem to the industry by denying learners touch books. Even there are very strict conditions not to use these books. How are we going to improve the production of books going forward? So, ladies and gentlemen, we as a department, we encourage the authorship of books, and we are partnering up with UTANA. Write books for core practice, for the core subjects. I know the challenges Mr. Otim has been mentioning. Those will not stop us. Those are just simple challenges. Going forward, we promote this industry. To this thing, as a ministry, how do we produce more materials for our learners? And we talked about the challenge of the online books. Yes, they are good and they are there, but the challenge is that if you don't have internet, you don't have the gadgets, especially in remote areas of this country, I think these electronic textbooks may not be of value. And even the data that you use, I don't think many of our people outside there have money to pay for data, to pay for these gadgets, to be able to download some of these books and be able to read them. What percentage? Because we're talking about them, because all of you are privileged, like among the 20%, maybe the 8% or 20% who have access to this. But I'm here to advocate for those of my brothers where I come from, and maybe where you come from, I don't know, who have no access to internet and who have never. I was told to train all the teachers in the country, which are planned right now, and we thought about Zoom. But even the facilitators, even the gadgets, the other day we were doing a mock training, internet went off. Now at the national level, internet is going off, but you have put about 800 people online. You are training them. You can see the kind of embarrassment you can cause. People are there, 800, and they are listening to you, but internet has broken off, power has gone off, the gadget is not up to the standard. These are challenges. So as much as we are talking about the electronic, the digital book, the e-book, and what have you, those are issues we can go along with, but we cannot completely do away with writing books which should be in the hands of the children. If they cannot do away with the teacher, studies have been carried out. People can learn on Google, but we cannot do away with the teacher, because the teacher is going to give a feedback. Electronically, you cannot get the feedback. You can try, you can inbox, but the feedback you get is physical introduction. The kind of emphasis, like when I'm presenting here, if I was presenting on Zoom, and when I'm presenting here, there is a difference. I'm emphasizing a point, and you see that this one is good for the country. This is how we can move. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I want to conclude, legally, we are going to support and work with you as you write the books and see how we can promote this in developing the human resource that we want for this country. I'm already aware of the challenges that I've told you, but you cannot really do away with these challenges at the go. But it not also stop us from encouraging our children to read. Encourage our children to read. Teachers have been a source of discouragement for learners to read. Teachers print yellow notes. They even sell their notes to the children. And this is very common. And they set examinations. I had a very big experience at Makerere at Nyambobo University. There was a lecturer who was selling pamphlets. And this lecturer, my son didn't want to buy the pamphlet. After all, others had bought. He would as well borrow, the roommate had bought. And when the lecturer gave the assignment, because my son had not bought a pamphlet, the results of the assignment got lost. And so, because of not buying the pamphlet from the lecturer, I repeated a whole year. I said, I did this, even here I signed for my submission. But then I did not buy the pamphlet. But why should I buy the pamphlet? There are books, I have these books, supposed to be these books. But you know, it's a source of income. That's what teachers do. They prepare their pamphlets, they set examinations from their pamphlets so that they make runners. Especially those white examiners. They just print the answers so that they know if you are going to do this number, this is how you respond. They even know how the marking guide is prepared, what is looked for, and that's what we do for our children. Killing creativity, killing curiosity, and the creativeness not there, even understanding. Children don't, they just cram and reproduce, and therefore they cannot conceptualize, they cannot analyze, they cannot. As the Minister of Veteran and Sports, we are in the process of developing a national material policy, and this policy seems to be there to help us as a country, so that we can be able to support those who are going to write books in the country. There should be a policy. You know, education, we have done a disservice to ourselves. We have done things adequately for many years. We have a nurses council, there is no teacher council regulated project into teachers. There's no teacher policy, there's no teacher act. The lawyers have a law council, regulate the profession. Okay? Many of these policies are just coming on board, the inclusive education, the ECD policy, but we have been having this for many years. But we didn't have a strategic direction to guide. You have been writing books. No wonder you have been cheated, you have been mistreated. If I've got, even me, when I remember when I was teaching at senior 4, at senior 6, I tried to write a book for Sierra E. Because I was one of the best Sierra E teachers around, and people used to look for my work. I picked interest in writing. I don't know why when I left those pamphlets I wrote. Nobody supported, nobody checked, nobody told me to go further. The idea was, I was one of the best Sierra E teachers at my time when I was in the classroom. All that I used to use, that's why we even use terms like pouring out material. We just pour it because we don't get paid anything. Now I don't think I can have anything to say. Look, this is a book I wrote for the 37 years I've been in service. You can imagine. And I was on the blackboard for more than 17 years teaching, giving notes. I would go to the class sometimes without even the notes, without a paper, and I would give notes for the whole lesson because everything was in my head now. That's gone. So, this is the problem and the challenge in African society. I can give an example. We are trying to have a reform in teacher education. We implement the national teacher policy. Every time journalists come to ask me, I said, did you read the book? That answer is on page 41. Did you read the book? Yes. You have a copy? Yes. Can you read on page 8? Then look at this one. They don't read. They ask the obvious. Yet they get these policies, we go for dissemination workshop, they attend, and they say, what about this one? They ask the obvious because we have not inculcated into the system a reading culture. People don't read. Want to listen? Yeah? People don't read. Yet, talking is supposed, like now, presenting this. I have a whole paper. Now, if I came here and I wrote myself, you know, this is like this. That's not the kind of presentation I talk about. You should be able just to give highlights. And then people read on their own further so that they can think. Developing a creative mind. So your writing helps our children to develop a mind to think. They can think on their own. They don't think on their own. They just want to cram. They want things to be done. So I want to end there by thanking you for inviting me. And as a way forward, we're ready to collaborate. As the authors, we are ready to support you. And we're going to encourage this because we have seen that now it is a gap in education, whereby when we say the home study materials, it was disaster, even at higher institutions. You can imagine at universities. Students don't want to read at universities. The first time I was at the university, we were given assignments and you would get reading these books because by then we didn't have the internet, we didn't have what, so you had to read those books, open the book and the other, and you could do not sit for final exams if you have your coursework, you don't have the coursework. Today, students do final examinations without the coursework. Ask myself, is the Fonseca Professor? But how come somebody is going to do final examination and coursework? Because you had even to get a particular mark, an average mark from the coursework. They would even invite you for exams. Had invitation cards from the registrar's office. Invite us for exams. There are those who will not be invited because of coursework. I don't know that those invitation cards are still there. You not qualify for university exams without an invitation from the registrar's office in form of an examination card. And you don't qualify for the examination card when you have passed your coursework, period. Without the coursework, no examination. Today, but they're also going by numbers, I think. So there's no reading at all. But with this our country, you are the part of the difficult regime this country by writing materials, by developing materials, and doing it right at the early stage. Doing it right at the right stage. You're not going to introduce reading, creative thinking at the university. By that time, it's disaster. And many of them, when they come to our offices, they call us analog. But you look at what they are typing, what they are writing on the computer. You take about an hour editing a letter. Done by the digital people here. You write their letters, they write. We don't understand it. Because we don't prepare them early. Today, what we are doing in terms of bringing the authors together, telling them to write the right materials at an early stage, is not something you are going to achieve tomorrow. The result of your efforts today will be realized many years ago. Because there's now a generation gap of those who don't want to read, who want to eat things, you know, they can't provide themselves in books. I remember when I was doing my one night. I remember I was doing my dissertation for the masters. One night I stayed in the books, and I realized it was morning, but I don't go to sleep. Then they don't want to go to read. I was reading books after my supper, and I realized it was 9 o'clock in the morning. But I was looking for some information, and my supervisor told me, for you to be able to do this, you must go through this, and I wanted to present this document to my supervisor, and I wanted to do it right. So I had brought all the books around and was consulting other people's dissertation and everything. So by the time I think I must present it at 2 tomorrow, by the time I realized that I had now got there, standing up like this was 9 o'clock. People don't want to do that now. They want easy things. No wonder what you see everywhere now. The mistake is because we did not write the books, they did not read these books, and eventually they want easy things. That's why people can go to parliament and present their debates, not what we used to do. Because for us, they were preparing us in debating as others, P3, P4, father is better than mother, water is better than fire. Those topics were not for fun. But we are preparing people who would become future parliamentarians to argue out a case building on evidence and how you present yourself. Chairperson, honorable speaker, and what have you. I remember when we were P4, P5, we are debating these things. People don't know that doing that, you are preparing a parliamentarian, you are preparing somebody for a very important meeting, a CEO, or somebody at a higher level. But we begin early. Today, when you see some of the way they conduct themselves, you say, no, the problem is not those people in parliament. The problem is us, the teachers, who not prepare them early. There is a Uganda saying, yes, you cannot correct it. So I want to end there by thanking you for convening this meeting and for realizing that there is a gap, and this generational gap needs to be addressed, and you are there to stand with us in the Ministry of Education to close up the gap and see that going forward, we need to write materials right from P1 for children to read, understand, be able to also develop their own materials, develop their own thinking, so that we can produce a generation which is creative, which is curious, which can analyze, which can understand, and be able to communicate. I submit. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Before you leave, can you just few, you can remain here.
Okay.
Just remain and stand. Just 2-3 questions. You can have 2 here, and if there is somebody online, just because he wants to go away, and he because of another commitment. So the 2 questions on what he has comprehended very, very well, because he has clearly done his topic very well. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the presentation. One observation in the interest of time. You rightly say that the reading culture is not there in our schools. When a commissioner, you have rightly observed that the reading culture in our schools is not almost there. Would it be too much if we incorporated reading as part of the timetable, a portion of some little time for the timetable for reading? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. This is about to home learning materials or self-study materials. I wonder whether the Ministry of Education has that program, because of recent, companies like Norwegian, they are earning a lot of money at the expense of authors. They are the ones now producing those self-learning materials. I don't know which way they are getting them from. And maybe it should be authors who should be doing that. And I'm wondering whether the Ministry of Education has that in program to promote it alongside textbook industry. Because at the end of the day, COVID is waking up everybody, including myself, by the way. I'm realizing that actually self-learning materials are supposed to be part of learning education. Because these developed countries have people do studies at home, and they complete without even going to schools. I wonder whether the Ministry of Education knows to consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dale, you want, but will not be at, you want to capture, you have to do one job. Whether you can ask them to go back and capture. Nobody has captured you as people.
Professor Elisam is a teacher, so yeah, my question is about the pamphlet writers. When I was in teaching, I did 2 pamphlets, one in literature paper 2, another one literature paper 3. I did it because I was motivated by my head teacher, because late 1990s, head teachers were letting teachers write. So we would write, and our salaries would get something small as an addition. My question is, how the commissioner can answer this one? Are you giving some motivation to teachers who are so creative, who have spent some time and written pamphlets, so at least they are also part of these big authors. For example, now UTANA is has been inspiring some of the teachers to write, including professors. So as Minister of Education, what are you doing? Because this is the serious source of knowledge. If all those pamphlets, because I remember I was teaching progressive, and the library was full of pamphlets, of course, some was not well written. So are you doing anything to motivate these people? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether you have the chat. Any other questions?
From the chat, apologies, there was some technical committee that I think something we have talked about at some point. I would love to ask Professor Sabiti two questions and closing on books. Not sure what time we can now discussion questions. The commissioner is so right to say we need to teach and encourage predict early. I think now let me get the questions which you are asking me, the reading culture. When we develop a curriculum as Minister of Education and Sports, we try to look at the cognitive, the psychomotor, and then the affective skills. We promote all of that in the curriculum. So we talk about competencies. The curriculum we have right now is competence-based. That's why people are getting challenges in implementing the lower secondary curriculum. We are not going away from giving knowledge to giving competencies. If you are teaching, say for example, there are topics, how do we conceptualize what you are teaching in the life situation, so that you acquire the competencies to be able to do, like the UNESCO learning to do, learning to know, learning to live. You know those UNESCO what? Yes. Knowledge to be able to be given to you. You learn to know, you learn to do, but you also learn to live. Yeah? So we're talking about knowledge competences, language competences, we're talking about skills, we're talking about values. Now, reading itself is a skill that we must promote. Some of you may wonder, if you are teachers and you are marking examinations, why some children get 0 in a question paper. Because they don't follow the instructions. They are not reading, they will not be able to read and understand, interpret. So reading is a skill that must be promoted as early as possible. Reading, understand, reading to do. Eh? You go down here and see the mess we are in. Sometimes I say, are we really? Because if you look at the road signs, they're supposed to be there for road safety. Now see how people read and understand and interpret the road signs on the road. Even the traffic lights. Even when it is red, people are driving. 2, so we should promote reading and incorporate it as part of what excites somebody to read and understand and continue reading. You authors also. What kind of language are you using? The flow. Some of the books you write, I didn't want to comment on that also because I will discourage you. Recently, there was somebody who brought a textbook in my office, and I said, this one should be redone. And I spent a lot of time, and they already produced it, and he was now selling it. I said, don't sell for even sake. You have ever come across such textbooks? People are selling books, but when you look at it, the language, leave alone the content. Because for me to be motivated to continue reading, there must be an interest. You arouse my interest to continue the flow of the language, the facts, These are not fictions, it's knowledge. So you need to look at that. Then on this of home learning materials, I think this one is a new phenomenon, new normal. As far as the textbook industry, something you need to think about and position ourselves, how best we can position ourselves and say, as authors, in this world, we don't get what we deserve, but we get what we go for. And when you come together, like you have come together and have a common front and be able to move, people will listen. If you move alone, nobody will listen to you. But if you're saying that we as non-fiction authors are saying you want to continue running the ministry, produce home learning material, they'll give a hearing. The money is there. So far, I've spent about 60 billion on home learning materials. Those are we are sending. The virgin area. How do you penetrate? Position yourself, be able to say, whereas they are producing home learning material, we are doing it better. We're improving on what we have seen. Going forward, how do you improve so that you can be able to make a case? Then finally, we'll talk about those of pamphlets, Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education not give a motivation to use that. We're going to work the materials. But the first motivation writers, when I wrote my pamphlet, I read through it about 3 or 4 times, and I was happy. The first person to enjoy any material that is written is the writer himself. But if you write something, I don't enjoy it. I don't read it because the first thing is that you yourself must be able to read this material and be able to own it. I can give you all the things I wrote in my pamphlet because that time I was one of the very good teachers. I compared myself with Gayaza, Gira Politici, and Yango. All those good schools, Namasagari by then was also a very good school. And I said, I want to be better than all those schools. I want to produce the best family. So it took me a lot of time. And when it was up, down like this, I said, I talked to people. The first one was CRE teacher at Gira College. I said, this is my work I produced. He said, yeah, this is very good, this is very good. I'm going to buy 10 copies. I said, yeah, even this one I'm buying. I went to other schools. Because you must have your work yourself. Then others may appreciate. But I think you can't be motivated by others buying when you yourself not motivated. And when you are motivated about your work, you be able to speak to it, through it, and others will now appreciate it, and then will be part of it. But saying ministry will now pick your work from somewhere, give you money, ministry is something. You're not there. Ministry is you and me. But when you love your work, you speak to it, you speak through it, people own it. When Professor Magara first came to us, he put the authors together and said, what is this saying? We have not even heard about it. He told me that from 2030, you can imagine the journey. Bring up to this level. Because coming together and celebrating this and being part of this is also very important. It has not been a simple effort, because people want to work in Hakun. I've done my book, I'm proud and I'm happy, I think I've done it. So how do we position ourselves with what we have? Let others appreciate. There was one person who was the public relations officer in a very big organization, a very successful organization. If nobody is going to talk about UTANA, you talk about it yourself. Yes. If you want to speak to it through it, in it, then nobody will talk about it. You can as well have lunch and go home. So your pamphlet, you must be owning it, then others appreciate it, and then they may be able to begin from there and say, how do we take it forward? Otherwise, some people need just to be woken up from a slumber to get on board. And that's what you are talking about. That people need to realize this. For many years, today is 2021, that we are talking about authors. Education came together which year? This of education. How many writers have we had? Professor Elisam Magara and others and what have you? They couldn't come together. This institution should have been formed so many years ago because it is the foundation of education. But now we're just making out. Thank you very much, and I beg.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kamishkani, for him. Yes, we have entered into the time of discussion, of general discussion. I know there's some hands raising, but it's fine.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, so we are coming.
I wish you well.
Yes.
Yeah. Today is a Friday.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, thank you. We are coming to the end of the discussion. This is a very interesting discussion. I know we have entered the time. I hope Asanas has prepared for it. Don't switch it up, switch us off. We apologize. We are going to have now the general discussion and recommendations from this workshop. Members, you have heard about what has been discussed, so you can point your question and give a recommendation what you want us to do as we conclude this meeting. If you still have a question, at the end, I'm going to ask the speakers to say something. Professor Elisam Magara and Maggie, I think, be prepared. If there is any question that comes up, you'll speak it. But now we are going into the last session of the way forward and the discussion. Members, if you have a question, please. What do you want from what has been talked? Where do you see us going? Where do you see the Ministry of Education doing? What do you want to see each person, each teacher, each pupil or a student, or UTANA, or schools, whichever stakeholder that is involved, what do you want it to be done? Because this is what we want to do now. Rachel, you have a pen and make sure that those recommendations are captured. I know we listen to the video, but we need to capture those ones. It's very important. Yes. Can you come here? Because please, if you have any, yes, come here. If you want anything that you want us to do, you want to be done, and target it on a stakeholder. Don't just say we should, no. You say people should be doing this, teachers should be doing this, you can be near.
Thank you, Professor.
Yes.
I'm basically requesting the UTANA to organize all that.
Yes.
They have already published the books, the publishing companies have already taken the books. But the vital part of the home learning materials, we could also take that by organizing the authors and the organizers that write that. There is also reference books. They are nowhere. We have been part of the writing somewhere, but the reference books are going to be very important. And I think UTANA can consider that. Since we have the directive with the Ministry of Education, we can also benefit from that one there.
Okay.
Yeah. My concern was on publishers taking 90% and the as Otim has said.
But
authors taking 10%.
That one we are not going to answer.
No, but when we organize, you can benefit in another way by earning from them.
Thank you very much. As we come here, so you have directed the recommendation to UTANA to pursue the home learning materials. Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor. Mine is also a recommendation and the target to UTANA, and arising from Professor Sabiti's presentation that there is a very urgent need for continued mentorship.
Okay.
Mentorship between us as colleagues, so that whatever we produce is really standard and meeting the current demands and trends.
That's very good. So mentorship, yes.
Excuse me, Professor Maggie Gee would like to say something.
Yes, it's going to cross the end. Let me get this one right.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. It's just that I have to leave to teach.
Okay,
so I wanted to say, Thank you
Yes,
very
Dr.
much.
Mo,
But
say it, yes.
could I say it? That would be wonderful. Just to say, digital books, electronic books needn't be the enemy because they usually give us a higher royalty. Contracts should give a higher royalty because it is cheaper for the publishers to distribute. So there is a cost in digitizing the book, but afterwards writers should get a higher royalty. But there is a risk of piracy, of course. It's easier to protect physical books. Also to say, I was inspired by the way Professor Sabiti talked about writing his books on agriculture, because he said, first of all, the wide, deep knowledge and the research and loving the subject for itself, and that his books have lasted a long time. I just wondered if that was one way around. Of course, it's perfect if writers get good information in time about the curriculum, but one way around it might be to do as Professor Sabiti does and to write a book that has wide general relevance. Bits of it will remain relevant however much the curriculum changes. For example, if you're editing a series of texts by other writers, as long as you get the permissions, some of those writings will continue to be relevant. And otherwise, I've learned so much, and thank you very much.
Okay, before you leave, do you have any other comment for what the other speakers have said as a concluding remarks?
Just that they've all been very, very interesting. And it gives me a different perspective, of course, and good working relations with publishers, with colleagues, with mentees, and with mentors. They matter so much, and writers need that as well as the ability.
What do you recommend to continue from what we have done? What do you recommend that should be done next?
I think contracts, it's to look at contracts and to get writers to all have the same policy, that they must have a contract. The contract must have certain basic clauses. We do have that in England. I think if all writers decide that they will write in an agreed relationship to publishers, then they will do better. And also remember, publishers can be our friends, but they also have to be a little afraid of self-publishing. So they won't always be stronger than us. And if we are all together, we can be as strong or stronger than them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Sabit, you are going to close this function, but before you close, we are going to ask you to give a closing remarks. But before you close, let us see whether there is any other person who has a recommendation. Yes, Sabit, you are going to close. Yes. Can we hear and see you? Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor. My recommendation is if UTANA can help come in and help the authors to come up with their independent material outside companies, because companies have tended to come up with the systems of exploiting authors. So if we can come up with our own system of producing our own material, and UTANA comes in to support us outside the companies. Thank you very much.
But have you answered the question on the business of an author? We are here at business. We don't want to enter the business of publishing. So that should be very clear. And as Maggie said, you need to make your deal very well so that your deal is known. You are supposed to conceptualize the right and publishers publish. So that is very important, that you don't enter into somebody's business. So if you, that one we are not to do it. Yes, what else? Who else? Yes, very quickly.
Thank you, Professor. We've been engaging with the Ministry of Education for a long time. And I don't know whether this is the time to legalize our relationship with the Ministry of Education. Now that authors are proposing that we go into home learning materials. Can we have a legal relationship with Ministry of Education to help us tackle this?
That's what we are trying to build. We already have some documentation communication. I think since you are a member of the board, I'll give you the progress in the meeting. But I think the Otim is aware of how far we've gone, and that's why the commissioner has said he's ready to work with us. But you know the protocol of the ministry, so that we are going into the right direction. Thank you very much. Lastly,
thank you very much, Professor. My name is Elisam Magara. I want to just express my pain as a writer. One time I was reading a book by someone. I just picked interest in that book. Was a new person who got it. And realizing there was a lot of wrong information which these learners were exposed to. No one could stop this person, no one to even advise this person on what to write. But the learners were really buying this information and reading it so much. I also participate in national exam assessment, and I've always found out that whenever we were discussing the marking guides, you realize in the marking, most of these learners present wrong information, not because they forgot to correct information, but because that's the information they got out there.
so what do you want us to
Now,
do?
my question is, given that our government has been reluctant on some of these policies about writing, what is UTANA going to do on regulating quality of the work which is exposed to our learners out there? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think that is the ministry has a process when the book is being to be published and selected for curriculum. We have called the assurance framework. I think that one it is there. But there is as the commissioner said, there is a course on instructional materials coming up, which was discussed by stakeholders meeting in March last year, and I think it is in the pipeline. It will sort out that. I was part and parcel, publishers were part and parcel. So I think that policy, according to because they are setting up to reviews committees, they are setting up standards. All authors of secondary and primary school are supposed to be registered. If you claim that you are writing, you have to be registered, and they know you. So we discussed for 2 days that policy. The ministry, I think, because of COVID, it didn't go very fast, but I think the stakeholders endorsed the policy. So the commissioner talked about it. So that will be sorted out. So, but what I see that you have given much suggestion to UTANA ministry for you. What do you want? Who can give me what responsibility are you taking from what has been talked from today? You recommend yourself, authors should do this, teachers should do this, students, teachers should do this. I want those recommendations. What do we see happening from here? Because this video is going to be shared, it's going to be broadcasted. What do you want somebody after listening say, this is my responsibility? Yes, come. You are giving it to the author? Yes. Then the one of the teacher. I want somebody who's going to give a responsibility to the teacher. And then one of the people or students. A recommendation, because you have pumped all the things to UTANA and the ministry.
Thank you very much. As an author or as authors, let us ensure we write quality books for our learners.
Very good. an author, write content as the ministry vision is. What do you recommend the teachers? Because the commissioner, I know, is passionate. What do you recommend? What recommendation do you give the teachers who go and write books? They say these books are, they shouldn't be stored in the cupboard. Yes. Recommendation to the teacher. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. My recommendation to the teachers is that they should create time within the time to make the learners read at least some work every day of the week.
Okay, that's very good. Although that one goes to schools. That one might, but I want the one of teacher. But you see, administrators, I know you're administrator. You might think, okay, that one, we have changed it. It goes to the schools, it heads to the administration of the schools. But I want for the teacher, in his capacity, without any disturbance, yes, come. What do you recommend the teacher? Somebody of the people should come, or students?
For me, my recommendation to the teacher is always set work, plan work for which encourages learners to look for information insights. In that way, they will be able to read to discover this information.
Yes, yeah. Now he has, although there are 2 points in one, yours goes to administration, his goes to the teacher. So you have captured it very well. Yes. Then what do you recommend to the runners, the people? And I also need the last one of the public. Yes, I need a recommendation so that we finish. Yes, we need something from the. What do you recommend to the teacher? Yes. Then somebody recommendation to the public should come. What should the public? Everybody should have work. Yes.
I think the group or the learner should always be ahead of, sorry, the teacher should always be ahead of the learner. By reading every material that's put forward, there is a problem of lack of the teacher. Some teachers are not well prepared. And this is partly because of the availability of the learning of the reading materials in the school. This question said that the books are being kept in their cupboard. It's because they are inadequate. If they were adequate, they would be everywhere. In the library, in the staff room, and so on.
That one goes to the teacher. I want to the learner.
The learner, obviously, can be made to read if the materials are available.
That is still the teacher. What do you want the teacher to do? What do you want? I want a recommendation. Yes, you know, I'm not a teacher, but by profession. I want, you know, you should recommendation to the learner, which he himself has an independent.
The learner should ensure that he or she reads the content assigned to her or to him by the teacher.
He can refuse it. It is not biting. It should, the recommendation I want is that each student, when he goes to school, he should be able to do it without any comparison, without it,
Thank you very much. I think the learner should know that the teacher's role is to facilitate learning.
Yes.
And therefore, in doing this, the teacher only gives a very small percent of what they are supposed to know.
Yes.
So if they are to really, really learn what they ought to learn, they are supposed to push themselves to go and read the books that the teachers have recommended to them to go and read. It is through that they will effectively learn.
That's very good. It is the responsibility of the student to read what is expected to read. The teacher's role is facilitate, isn't it? Normally when I'm teaching, the first lesson I always say, when I take them through expectations, and then I say, now methodology. I say, what is the role of it? What are you going to do? What do you want to do? How do you want to us to conduct the class? Then they say, what you teach, you lecture. Then I say, huh? So for you, what do you do? Say, take notes. So when they said take notes, I said, okay. Then in the middle, they said, lecturer, you didn't give us notes. I said, but what did we agree? We agreed that you are going to take notes. My role is to teach. So they should know it is not the responsibility of the teacher to give you what to give you notes, but teach them to look for notes. So they should know how to write in this case. Okay, so community, yes. Public in this case, public.
Okay, the public includes the parents. The public includes the parents and all other stakeholders, but we should encourage them to purchase the learning materials for the learners, and also the teachers should purchase. Okay, the community has all those stakeholders, but to purchase these materials and get them to read.
And supervise, yes, you have it. So as you buy clothes, as you buy food for the teacher, and for the child, as you give him a shelter and accommodation, you should know that the child needs to the brain has to be fed by what he's going to eat. I think those are some of the recommendations. Since we have a private meeting after this session, we will add some of them. I want to thank you, the presenters. Mr. Tim, as the speaker, do you have the final word? And then want to connect some participants. You have the responsibility of sharing knowledge in writing, and we need and see how we support each other. While we do that, we should also be positive to staff so that we maintain the good working relations with our supervisors. Thank you very much, Mr. Tim. So at this moment, I will request Professor Sabiti to give your final remarks on the seminar and officially close this function. And from there, the host, before I give up the microphone, I want to thank the Asanansia from the International Forum. I want to thank fiction authors and translators for giving us support. And I want to thank the Ministry of Education for allowing us to dialogue with them. It's not this free commissioner to come here and he is able to share with us what he thinks, and he has committed himself that he's ready to work with us. I think we need to thank him if you come where you are, glad for him, and we look forward for the interview. So with that, I want to request Professor Sabiti to give his final remarks and closes this function. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes, we are hearing. We are hearing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Magara, for organizing this important seminar that has brought to both international, local authors, stakeholders in this business of authorship as a business. I think the theme is very relevant now than before. Many authors have been thinking that you can publish and share your knowledge and that's it. But I think time has come. Since book publication, authorship is an industry, it is important really to start thinking how best we can get this profession as a business. You know, we have several teachers that need to start writing, but perhaps they require skills, mentorship. And I think we need the regular seminars, regular meetings to inspire our teachers to write books. That's one way you can say, I have contributed, I have shared my knowledge, and I will leave it behind for many years to come, even when I'm no longer there. It should be a pride for a teacher, a good teacher. You can't teach for 20 years, 30, and walk away without a footprint in the area of publication. So it is very important to see how we can make UTANA stronger, perhaps by linking ourselves with several institutions in the country that are interested in knowledge, in generation of knowledge and preservation of knowledge. It's only through writing that we can preserve knowledge that we need. Remember, Uganda as the economy, what they are saying, they want a knowledge-based economy. And knowledge-based economy is based on what we write. So it's very important, it's a very high prioritized sector that all of us should start thinking to contribute. You may not necessarily want to write alone. You can partner with a colleague because we have different skills, we have different knowledge. So partnering with a colleague can also inspire or can make you write. You may not know how to write, but you may have the ideas. Someone else will put those ideas across so that you come out with a book. And as the Professor Gee said, we are moving to the digital era. So what we write will definitely be digitalized, or we write as it is digitalized. So that's another area to think about. As we turn this into business, we also need to see that we are moving into a new era of digitalization. So the other aspect which should really be looked at, Chair, is that when books are written, governments, especially Ministry of Education, should take them up so that they are important reference materials for the teachers, for the learners. It's very, very important that also we need that, because that becomes an incentive to the writer. So really, it has been very, very interesting. We've picked knowledge from our colleagues, the teachers. They have put up their views. We picked the ideas from international authors and ourselves. So we really need now to be thinking, how can we turn authorship into business so that we survive? Education is there for us to survive. So start thinking about this authorship to make some living so that we do not really be mocked by the public that teachers can only teach, that's all, and they are poor people. No, we are not, because we have knowledge. Once you have knowledge, you are actually rich. It's the way you share it, you share that knowledge. Now it's a business like any other. This corona has created a lot of innovations for us. And I think this is the time to do that. So I want to thank everybody that has contributed, has participated, and thank the organizers and our association for doing a good job of bringing people together. That's very, very important. And we believe that you will do so in the future. So having said that, I now officially close this seminar and wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.